Joining us now on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America, Jill Vogel. She's a state senator from the Valley. She is also a leading candidate for lieutenant governor. Let me tell you how this works. There's a whole bunch of things going on June 13th. It's like primary-orama. Governor's primaries, both sides of the aisle. Lieutenant governor's primaries, both sides. HG primary on the Republican side, plus all kinds of local races. House of delegates all over the place on both sides there, too. So a lot of action on June 13th for lieutenant governor. There's three candidates vying for the Republican nomination. The front runner, labeled by us, Jill Vogel, state senator, Fauquier County. Also, state senator Bryce Reeves, Republican from Stafford County. And House of Delegates member Glenn Davis from Virginia Beach. Joining us now, though, the front runner, Jill Vogel. Senator, good to have you with us.
Good morning. Ooh, I love that introduction. How are you?
Never better. Let's get to Ed Gillespie outlining a tax cut economics package. He had a meeting with the media there over the phone. I just wanted to get your thoughts on a 10% tax cut, personal income tax cut for Virginians. This is the Virginia state income tax. I just want to make that clear. Right. And they did analysis. Average family of four in Virginia, that would save $1,300 annually out of pocket. Now, $1,300, that's like $100 a month, all right? For a lot of people like me, $100 a month, I got to be honest, I mean, that actually makes a difference. I can take my family someplace on a weekend that I can't normally do. That's a big deal. How do you stand on it? Is it going to work?
I support it, and I would say, hello, where have we all been over the last 4 years when, we've had countless statewide candidates run on tax reform and regulatory rollback and government reorganization. These are all the things that we have to do in Virginia. And in terms of the statewide leadership we have right now, they haven't engaged. They haven't introduced anything meaningful. There's not been any effort at all at meaningful tax reform. And if you consider what that would mean for Virginia's economy and for people like myself, and I know lieutenant governor candidates, that's why I'm thrilled you're having me on. We don't always break through, but this legislative session, those were the biggest bills that I carried. One was a bill that would have returned budget surpluses, and as Gillespie's plan talks about, they're projecting eventually revenue shortfalls are going to turn into budget surpluses. And my bill would have required that those surpluses go back to taxpayers, get baked back in, and over time reduce the tax rate. And, I've introduced bill after bill, and, this session, those are some of my biggest legislative priorities. And unfortunately, I hate to say, it didn't pass because what it requires is statewide leadership, whoever wins this governor's race, I am begging them to make this top of the list priority. It's been a top of the list priority for me since the first time I was elected. Back in 2007, when I first went to session in 2008, a big government reorganization bill was something I introduced, tax reform, but it takes statewide leadership with a vision that will work together, that will push this through the legislature and work to, generate both, educate the public about it, because that's a piece of it, and then, kind of leverage the resources that you have as a statewide leader with your legislative colleagues, both on the Republican side and the Democratic side, appreciating that is the only thing that's going to make a difference in Virginia. And you consider it's been a couple hundred years since we've addressed some of these issues, personal property tax, B-poll. I mean, come on. So I can't tell you how thrilled I am that this is what we're talking about right now in these statewide races, and I wish we were talking about it more.
Well, look, now that you mentioned that, Senator Vogel, it's very frustrating because here we are in this campaign until Ed Gillespie released this plan, which was pretty comprehensive. I have to say I was very impressed by it. I mean, they did their homework on it. He laid it out to reporters in a conference call. He had Senator Obenchain on the call, Kirk Cox on it, to show that there was backing for this. But you're right. I mean, you look at the last couple of General Assemblies and, the Republicans have a majority in the Senate and the House, and you say, where has major tax reform been? Instead, it's been, we're talking about other issues, guns. Now we're talking about statues in Charlottesville. I mean, that's all very interesting. But I got to tell you, a 10% tax reduction of the Virginia income tax and getting rid of some of these fees like the B-poll tax and things like that, I mean, this isn't like corporate income tax where,
Right.
the money trickles down and maybe you'll see it sometime in the
Well, yeah.
future. This
And
is real
it's like
dollars.
economics 101.
It's real
And,
money.
again, no single legislator can do it alone, which is why we desperately need to be making these our leading issues and these campaigns. And I've been, talking about it everywhere I go, talking about the legislation I introduced this year. But again, every year when I introduce the legislation, they say, well, we need to send it to a working group. We can't do it piecemeal, which is true. You can't just, tinker with one piece of it. It's going to take comprehensive tax reform.
Right.
And look at what's happening to the economy in Virginia. And look at where we're ranked. And look at how we're continuing to plummet. And look at how states that are actually being much more innovative and aggressive in tax reform are faring. And they're smoking us. They're leaving us in the dust. And we have all the resources in terms of workforce, in terms of infrastructure, access to the port, all of these great things in Virginia to sell. And what we have is an antiquated, outdated tax system that's killing people and making them leave Virginia.
Well,
they're going
I
to
think
North
you're right.
Carolina. They're going other places.
It's just not reflective of the economy. And I just want everybody to think about this for a second because it was so stark. Politicians talk all the time and it goes in one ear and out the other with me because I've heard all the stuff, Senator Vogel, so many times. But I was sitting on that conference call with Ed and Kirk and Obenshane, and, I follow Perriello. We had him on the other day, Ralph Northam, et cetera, some of the other candidates, Wagner's on. And when they proposed this, I had just like 3 days ago, and got a tax bill from the state of Virginia, our state income tax, which was $6,000. And so it was like, or that was the estimate she made. And so it's $6,000. And I'm thinking, 10%, that's $600. I have to buy my son a new baseball glove. I'm trying to figure that out. That is real dollars for average working people out there. I think it's really going to make a difference. And I'm frustrated, as you say, that Republicans haven't been talking about this in the past. Instead, we get caught up and talking about this stuff that's stupid. Look, I don't want to downplay the statues. I'm all for statues. But really, this is the centerpiece of our campaign. We're talking about statues, whatever else. Let's talk about tax reform.
Next year, North Carolina's corporate tax rate is going to drop to 3%, and here we are right across the border stuck at 6%. Talk about things like families like you and like mine who want to spend money on other things rather than having to write every check to Virginia.
Yep.
For things like, in companies, BPOL is devastating. You got to pay a tax no matter whether you're making money or not.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Well, not only that,
right.
the BPOL tax, every business owner that I know hates it because you're right. You pay this fee, doesn't matter what your income is. And the thing is, the local governments, as my mom always says, bless their heart, they'll come into your place of business with an invoice and demand that money. And they'll threaten with, padlocking the door if you don't give them a check or put it on a credit card. It's a shakedown. Right. The whole thing's awful, right?
Right. Of course it is. And just because local governments are, wig out every time it comes up is not a reason not to address the issue. There are other ways to generate revenue that is way less harmful to business. You just got to be smart about it. And, again, I come back to this thing of I've been jumping up and down on the sidelines. And again, lieutenant governor's races don't always get all the attention, for sure. Mm-hmm. The gubernatorial election is sucking all the oxygen out of the room. But I've been jumping up and down on some of these issues forever and fighting them through the legislature and talking about them with local chambers of commerce and business people. And, this election in 2013, and I say this everywhere I go, Republicans will never win if we focus on same-store sales. If we sit around talking to our own Republican base all day about the same issues, we are never, ever going to win. Mm-hmm. And the issues that matter to real people, to people like me who are paying taxes, there's no more timely time to be talking about this than right now when everybody's deciding how in the heck we're going to pay our taxes. So if you consider that, we need to be talking to independents and Democrats and Republicans and everybody in Virginia about these economic issues. And I had this big regulatory rollback bill this legislative session, and tons of people engaged. People who aren't typically, either on our side or even necessarily paying attention to legislation. We're saying, hey, this would be a really big deal for, somebody like me. Here's a bill that passed that I was involved in. The law changed 12 years ago. We've never changed the regulation. Will somebody do something about this? This is all practical, common sense, good management. And that's all people want in Virginia is a well-managed state. And so we should be saying to them, look at this Republican ticket, a Republican ticket I certainly hope to be on and hope to help lead, and look what we have to offer, as opposed to, the other side that I would argue has left us with, at best benign neglect and at worst, intentional failure. So, come along with us and look what we can do. And, the Republicans that are running this year who have great solutions and who've been working really, really hard on these issues, and I certainly did this legislative session with a package that was, killer on some of these issues. And sadly, we're fighting Republicans sometimes to get this stuff done. But I think if we lead on these issues, we'll win in November.
What is the Vogel plan? We talked about the Gillespie 10% income tax reduction plan in Virginia. Is there a Vogel economic plan?
Well, my Vogel economic plan is something I've been really outspoken about for a long time, but really especially this legislative session, as we were working towards, drawing attention to what we hope to be winning statewide races, was what we all can offer in November and beyond. And it's a very, similar structure. It's returning surplus back to taxpayers, trying to bake that in a way that, you're not actually handing somebody back a check or some kind of a credit card, but you're actually over time working to lower the tax rates. And I'm a big advocate for lowering the corporate income tax rate and for lowering the personal income tax rate. And, there are extraordinary ways to generate revenue through broadening the economy, as well as getting rid of some of these antiquated taxes. So it's much about what we just talked about. But the other big piece is the regulatory rollback. And that's not something that Ed talked about, but that is critical. 24% of the cost of a new home is the regulations, the cost of the regulations involved in that. So if you layer in what local governments are doing with the regulatory process and what state government's doing, and it's not just regulations in the way we think of them, like here's this reg, you got to comply. It's the process that slows things down. It's how we are inefficient. It's how VDOT manages projects and works through with local businesses. We have got to do some of that reform because that would also have an incredible impact. And it's much of what, the Trump administration, you hear what they're attempting to do right now in terms of just trying to, make things simpler, for God's sakes. Help people get the work done they want to get done. And so when I travel around the Commonwealth of Virginia and talk to business people who are trying just to, maybe open a new store somewhere or get the approval for, expansion of a business, and you've got to spend, thousands and thousands of dollars through the permitting process, through waiting.
Nightmare.
I mean, it actually prices people out of expansion.
Well, then they just don't go forward.
Right.
They just don't go forward. So they don't create the jobs. You don't expand the tax base, et cetera. I want to get to
and I passed that bill this year. I just want to give my own little plug to the regulatory rollback bill that I passed. It's one of the few bills, the Democrats fought against all these reform measures, but mine is one the governor can't veto because it's actually an amendment to the Constitution. And I think it will pass, and it will give the legislature the opportunity to go in and kill, outdated, burdensome regulations that no one will address.
So is it on the ballot?
It will be. It has to pass one more time. So
it has to pass one more time. So then it could be on the ballot in 2018.
Election, right.
Got it. Okay. Let's get to Dominion Power, the great Frank Wagner negotiated rate deal for Dominion Power 2015. Had Ed on the other day. He said he's for renegotiating it, as is Terry McAuliffe. If you're lieutenant governor and the vote is 2020, you got to break the tie and hit the gavel. Do you think a deal's a deal and we stand by it, or do you think we start over?
I think a deal's a deal. I think a deal's a deal and we stand by that. But I also think that, it depends on a lot can happen between now and then. Nothing is really static, so it's really difficult to say, well, at this exact moment, this is how I would vote in 2 years. But
how would you vote now?
I believe a deal's a deal, but I also believe that smart people who can appreciate that, things change would also, do good to go back and consider what's going to happen in the next year or two.
It sounds like if you had to make the decision today, you wouldn't vote to change it, right? You would stand by it, but you leave yourself open because things change. All right, I got to read you this text here. Jason from Chesapeake says, last week in Chesapeake, Councilmember Roland Davis introduced a resolution to study the B poll tax and other business taxes in Chesapeake. There were actually some members of Chesapeake City Council that voted against the local bee poll tax. So there you go. Okay,
Yay!
you got
even local governments are gonna finally come along and agree that it's because it's so unpopular and it's
a shakedown. It's a shakedown.
And so bad for business.
So it's horrible.
But I also have to tell you one big thing you might not know about.
Yes.
That I'm happy to announce on your program, because you know what? Most important things that have happened on our campaign, including launching our campaign, we announced on your radio show.
Thank you.
Last night, the VCDL PAC announced their endorsements.
No way.
The board met and decided who they were going to endorse for lieutenant governor. And in a unanimous vote, considering each candidate's legislative record, the bills that they've carried, and how that they voted, the VCDL PAC endorsed me, Jill Vogel, for lieutenant governor.
All right, now, because we don't do acronyms on the show, tell everybody what VCDL is.
The Virginia Citizens Defense League. So I'm proud to say everywhere I go that I'm the only candidate running for lieutenant governor that has an A+ rating by the NRA. But now I can say, when I'm on the stump and people want to know, where are you? Where do you stand in defending, my Second Amendment rights and standing up for liberty and sticking up for less government out of my life, out of the way, out of the regulatory environment, and for heaven's sakes, out of my business when it comes to guns. Because I was just reading again this morning, somebody wants to say you can only buy one gun a month. They're going to start pushing back on that again. I'm proud to say that the Virginia Citizens Defense League, which is also a very active and engaged, especially in the legislative process, pro-Second Amendment group, endorsed me. Their PAC endorsed me.
Okay, so you got the endorsement of the VCDL on your record with guns on the Second Amendment,
right.
Let's say. But Bryce Reeves, one of your opponents in this race, one or two opponents, has made his stance on the Second Amendment. And what he's done with the gun lobby, he's made that a centerpiece of his campaign. So why didn't he get the backing of them?
Well, you'll have to go ask them. I mean, they make a long and very cogent and intelligent response to that sort of question when they lay it out and describe how it is that they reached their decision. And they talk about the relative engagement of each of the candidates and the time that they've spent and their consistency, and it's been pretty clear.
Wow. Okay, I'm shocked by that. I didn't know that.
You can go to their Facebook page and you can read what they say.
I'm going to have to read it.
It's just a question of how long we've been engaged in the bills the bills that I've carried, and I just have a long and consistent track record and a long partnership in working on these issues. And I don't think that this needs to be, the centerpiece of any campaign. This is just part of a larger statement about what it is that I stand for.
Well, this is a bet. This is a bet I would have lost. I'd have bet my whole 10% Virginia income tax cut that VCDL would have given their endorsement to Senator Reeves, because he's made this basically the centerpiece of his campaign for lieutenant governor. Speaking of
and
Reeves,
here's what I would say is the centerpiece of my campaign for lieutenant governor. It's not what you say, it's what you do. Go back and look at the gun records. There's a reason that I'm the only one that has an A+ rating by the NRA, because I've carried those hard bills. And I've stood up when, and done the hard work when nobody else wanted to. And I've carried bills that nobody else would touch, because I believe that there's no arbitrary line where the Constitution starts or stops.
Right.
It's the Constitution. And whether it's your right to fundamental liberty or your right to the Second Amendment, there's no arbitrary line. The government can say, nope, it stops here.
All right, I've only got a minute.
That other people thought were controversial, and that's why, VCDL and the NRA have worked with me and stuck up for me. So I'm incredibly honored by the PAC's decision and proud that it was unanimous, and thrilled that they've, come out and made the announcement, because it just helps us build this momentum. I feel confident we're going to win the nomination. If people continue to engage the way they're engaging now, we're running a positive campaign on all these issues that we're talking about: taxes, government reform, regulatory rollback, defending families, education choice, the Second Amendment. And we're getting so much positive response everywhere we go. And, it's not about me. It's about the issues.
All right, I got a half a minute.
That's what people care about.
I got a half a minute, Senator Vogel. Reeves lawsuit, where is it?
Oh, there isn't one.
So far,
nobody's filed a lawsuit.
No filings.
So, nope.
All right. I just want to clear that up.
And we're going to win. And I feel really confident, most of all, that we're going to win in November. We have the campaign that can win in November. Most people believe that Justin Fairfax will get the nomination on
Yes,
the Democratic
I do.
side.
Landslide.
He's somebody who's never held elected office. And I believe that given the work that I've done in the legislature and the coalition that I can build across party lines with independents and with Democrats and with folks who I've worked with on issues like autism and, all kinds of issues that, that aren't Republican issues or Democratic issues.
All right,
people
Senator, I got to
issues.
go.
They're good management
I got to go. I'm
issues.
out of time.
I think I can win, and I look forward to having the support of a lot more than, again, just our Republican base. If we have more than that, we'll win in November.
Senator, I got to take off. Thank you for your time today. No lawsuit still from Reeves. More information, go to Vogel for FOR Virginia.com.